Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show. Mainly caused by me getting up teensy bit late. Stayed up till 2 last night.
Oh dear!
My days slipped back.
Well, it's like Christmas. You see, you can just work when you like and sleep when you like. And I mean, the 24/7 clock is irrelevant unless you've got to go to business meetings 9 to 5.
Yeah, pretty much. And then I woke up this morning at 8, and it really was an effort to even open my eyes. Next thing I knew, it was 9:30. But I'm here.
Well, do you know what? I thought to myself this morning, oh, it's so nice in bed. I wonder if I could get Nicola to do me at 1 o'clock instead of 10 o'clock. And so we both were on the same page this morning.
Yeah. But I couldn't even wake up enough to look at my phone. That's how bad I was. So I wouldn't have sent the message.
No.
How's your week?
Tell me. No, you go first. You tell me about yours.
Okay, well, it's pretty much the same as usual. My mate Pete and I have spent the week looking for online poker software where we can play for free, because he's sort of quite new to it, although I've got to say he's coming up to speed rather frighteningly fast because he's very good at these things. And he's been reading a book. And yesterday we just decided that none of the online poker was any good because we wanted one where we could see our faces as well. And there is one called Poker Face where you can do that.
Oh, that's a good name, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yes. And we thought that was the answer to our prayers, but it turned out not to be good enough sound. So while we could see each other's faces, he couldn't hear me speaking. So what we went with a new alternative, which is to have a Zoom meeting playing, which means our faces are on screen when we talk. And actually we can put it on gallery view so we can both see each other, which is good because you can see each other's tells, you see. So he's developing a feeling from what my tells might be when I've got something.
Can you play poker à deux?
You can, but it's a slightly different game. It's a lot more aggressive, and you can slow it down if you want to by not playing. But that doesn't stand you in good stead when you get into a one-on-one situation.
No. I think you probably need more than 2. Can't you invite some more virtual pals to your Zoom meeting?
Well, we did invite the other Peter, but he's either too tired or didn't get the technology going in time. But
right.
Wednesday night's going to be poker night, whether we're in or out.
Oh, that's good.
And Pete's going to invite a few friends, and I am too, because we can have up to 9 on the table. So.
Yes.
So we're going to do that for next week. But so that's a nice development.
And how will you deal with the money aspect? Putting your chips in, taking your chips out, doing the accounting, and paying the winners.
Oh, the software does all that.
Oh, I see. Right. I thought yes. Okay. So it's the software with Zoom. I was thinking you were just on Zoom.
No. We're using PokerStyle software, which is
okay.
Which is nice. I've used that before, so I knew my way around it.
Okay.
You get to play with play money, or when you feel more confident, you can put 20 quid in and go and play tournaments at £1.80.
Yeah, got you.
So, yeah, he'll get a really good grounding, and when we go back to the pub, the old boys won't rook him quite so bad. And it is Phoebe's 25th birthday on Sunday.
Oh, I know how she feels.
It's so different when they turn a big grown-up milestone like that, rather than just 18 and then 21, and they all still feel like kids, and suddenly they're not anymore. It's really quite interesting. And I've had now this is a celebration. I've had another rejection from my writing from the BBC Writers' Room. This was the one where you get to go and work. No, it isn't. Isn't the one where you get to go and work on the soaps? It's
the one where you had to go to London weekly for 17 weeks or 14 weeks or something. Is it that one?
Yes, where you're being developed as a writer, not specifically having a project developed. Yeah, and so I didn't get through that. So the rejection is a good one because it brings you closer to the 100 when you get unrejected, accepted.
Indeed. Yeah.
So I
yes.
You've got the one where you send in a pilot of your program, and you also send in a storyline for one of the soaps. So that would be good. And I've also got in October the one that I can pay for and go to that I won the bursary for. So that's my last.
Yeah. Should there be a strategy like for every rejection I submit 2 more or something like that?
Well, there's not that many things you can submit to, unfortunately, because lots of production companies
Okay.
take submissions, and I think if I'm getting rejections, then it's telling me that my script needs working on. So I think it would be good to go on that thing in October and work on it for 2 weeks solid.
Okay. Right. Gotcha.
Allowed out by October. Anything else about my week? No, that's pretty much it, actually. So what about yours?
Okay, so both my neighbours left next door over the weekend, so I'm now completely alone here. On Saturday evening, the girlfriend and I drove the boyfriend to his bus connection that had been laid on by his employer, and it was a lovely sunny evening, and the lovers had to kiss goodbye, and, it was all a little bit emotion. And then the next morning I drove her at 6 o'clock in the morning to Heathrow, which was a 4-hour round trip. She got on what's known as a repatriation flight and gone home to her father in Sweden, which isn't on lockdown, as you know. But she had to get a plane with Finnair and stop in Finland en route to Sweden. And on the plane, she sat between 2 people wearing hazmat suits. And I don't think she was having me on when she told me that. So that was quite an interesting idea of the thought of her. She asked me in the car, could she take four baby wipes? So I said, yeah. So she was armed with 4 baby wipes and sat between 2 men in hazmat suits.
At least they weren't able to infect her. That's the main thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't think she was worried. I'm alone here now until either the B&B Airbnb restarts, or until the landlords who are abroad have their lockdown lifted in their country, which is even more draconian than ours. They can't even take the dog out for a walk. And even when their lockdown is lifted, depending on the time of the year, I'm not sure they would choose to come back to the UK. So now I've taken some risks. I've left the house. I've left it alone. I've driven on motorways. I've filled up with petrol. I've been to Marks and Spencer's old people's early Monday morning thing. All good. Given that we've both learned this week that lockdown is now potentially reducing our immune systems, I'm glad that none of this has been scary in the least, and it didn't feel risky either. But last night something strange happened, which I think probably does break the rules, which is a car crunched up the drive, and I ignored it because I'm not in the big house, and they often ring the bell of the big house, and it's usually Amazon, so they usually leave a parcel in the porch. But this wasn't Amazon, and I was sitting in my little cottage next door with the kitchen window open for the cats, talking on Messenger. So this person heard my voice and followed the sound of my voice and came down and appeared at my front door, and I was on the settee under a blankie with a cat next to me, so I signalled to him to open the door, and he opened the door, and he said, "Do you have Labrador dogs?" I said, "Yes, we do, but they're not here at the moment." And he was a local man, probably a farmer, I'm not altogether sure, who there'd been an incident of a black Labrador behaving badly. And I said, look, the next door neighbours do have 3 dogs. They've got one with them overseas, and their 2 black Labradors are staying with some people who love them very much in Portsmouth, and they've been there since Christmas. So I don't think, and also they're very old and fat, and one's had a stroke, and they barely go for a walk, let alone chase sheep. So, but the point is, it occurred to me this morning, we probably shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have gone to visit a neighbour during lockdown, and I shouldn't have just so gaily waved him in through the front door when I was sitting on my settee.
Were you 2 meters away?
We were socially distanced, but I'm not sure you're allowed to leave the house for anything which isn't essential.
He probably thought that was essential.
He probably did, yes. But the point is, I'm always quite surprised that I cannot remember that I'm not allowed to just wave people gaily in through the front door.
Yeah, no, it's well, because you swap back to normal life for a minute, don't you?
Even at the beginning when the kids arrived, I didn't. They remembered, but I didn't. I don't feel afraid. I think that's the thing.
Well, it's very good, isn't it? And I hope he found the naughty Labrador.
I'm sure he's gone off and accused somebody else of Labradoring. Yes.
Hassling sheep's a bit more than being naughty, though, isn't it?
Don't know that it was hassling sheep. It was doing something. I didn't really listen to his side of the story, so I was so keen to vindicate R2,
Right.
And then the other thing about my week is, of course, on Monday, it was my 65th birthday and I was here alone. Yeah. And so what I decided to do was postpone it until later in the year. And like the Queen, this year I'm having 2 birthdays because although I wasn't being neg, I was being completely neutral about it, but there doesn't seem much to celebrate in lockdown without your loved ones.
No, and you know, we're having to put together some sort of celebration for Phoebe.
Yeah, but at least there's 3 of you. Can you imagine me by myself? I mean, I did have cake because I've been to Marks and Spencer's for it, but apart from that, somebody on Facebook asked this morning, you know, what 3 things will you do? Well, have a haircut, get a pedicure, and hug my squidgers. But you know, without being able to hug your squidgers, there's no point in having a birthday thing, really.
Yeah. Much better to postpone it, especially as
I agree.
You might divulge your address by then, and I'll be able to actually send you something.
Well, I've certainly I haven't even divulged my various addresses to my family, so they don't know where I am either. So I got lots of digital messages saying happy birthday wherever you are. And but I think it's like Phoebe. It is a significant birthday. It's 65.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like celebrating birthdays and sometimes I don't. And this was completely in the middle of that, completely neutral. It wasn't like, oh, I don't want to celebrate it because we're on lockdown. It wasn't that. It was just, I do want to celebrate it, but just not today.
Yeah. And I think it's perfectly within your rights to move your birthday around.
I think it is too. If the Queen can do it, so can I.
Exactly right, yes.
Yes.
I said to Phoebe, do you want to postpone it? And she said, well, I'd quite like to.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so there we go. We're having a family one, and then she'll have one with her mates later on.
Yes, perfect. So has anything fueled your fire?
Well, it has, as a matter of fact.
Oh, good.
Bitcoin is going... There's a thing coming up called the Halving, which is built into the...
Oh, yes. Somebody else told me about this. A reverse split, as we call it in cash flow.
I'll tell you something. Somebody described the Bitcoin white paper written by the mysterious Natoshi Sakamoto, whatever his name is. Yes, I think that's right. He wrote this paper after the last crash, and when he was so disgusted with the banks and everything, and he wrote this thing that basically set out how a completely country-free, under no control of anyone, digital currency would work and be absolutely perfect and be better and address a lot of the issues that fiat currency address, but better and more. And the halving is one of them. So every so often it gets to a point where it gets more difficult to mine the coins. Now, I don't even understand about mining. I've tried to read lots about it, and I still don't really understand.
I think it means there's just a limited supply, and must be.
Yeah, well, it is, and every time it gets more, the hash, they get to a certain point in the release of the coins.
Yep.
The difficulty changes, and that adjusts whether people mine more coins or less coins, and then also it halves the amount of coins that miners earn. So it's an ever decreasing supply. It's only ever going to be 22 million bitcoins out there, and it's an ever decreasing supply that gets more and more scarce.
It gets smaller.
The opposite of inflation.
Fiat, yeah.
And that's and traditionally, every time there's been a halving, there's been a very good bull market on it afterwards. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create a strategy which I think I've cracked this week, which means that I can buy and sell, buy when it's low, sell when it's high, as well as benefiting from the rise in as it goes up anyway. So, and then I did a spreadsheet the other day that took into account if you could do 1% a week growth on your trading, and then it went up by 2% a week, because it's a bit like property, it doubles every 10 years. No, doubles every year, sorry. It's just all really, really exciting. But the thing is, the coronavirus had completely damped down the effect of the halving coming. And everyone was saying, there's not going to be much impact from the halving this year. But apart from anything, all those other countries whose currency is looking dodgy and they're piling into Bitcoin, it's starting to really happen this week. And it's gone up literally from, you can work the percentage out for me, you're probably better than I am, $7,500 per Bitcoin to $9,500 per Bitcoin. That's $2,000. So that's probably about, it's nearly a third, isn't it?
We can let people work that out for themselves, can't we? I haven't got a calculator. I'm perched on a couch with writing my notes on my knee. It's not convenient for me to do a sum, I'm afraid.
So the reason it's fueled my fire is because it's something that I've got into for a very little tiny investment. I've spent a lot of hours watching training videos, which I got for free on YouTube, and I'm now developing my own strategy, which seems to be working. Because I had this stop loss strategy, which is when you put a thing in where if it goes below a certain point, you get kicked out. And I was putting them too close to the actual price. So every time there was a little dip, generally just before a rise, I got kicked out, and then I'd see a rise happen, and I wasn't in it, so it was really jolly annoying. But I think I've got my percentages right now, so I'm very excited, and I've spent quite a lot of time looking at green and red candlesticks this week. It shouldn't be exciting, but it is. And that's it, really.
Okay. Nothing's fueled my fire this week, except to say that clients are beginning to feel the pressures of lockdown, and I must say I agree with them. It's not so much fun, except when the sun is shining and in the short term, and I think we're all beginning to be a bit restless, which I think leads quite nicely into what we're going to talk about in Focus of the Week.
So should we start that then?
Yes. Do you want to start? Shall I tell you what I've written here? We're going to call this episode Who Can We Trust? And I've written here, since all the sources of information are confusing and conflicting and nobody agrees on anything and everyone has an opinion, who can we trust about the pandemic, about everything going forward? And then I've written in big capital letters, because I think it's a secondary thing we need to discuss today, censorship.
Yes.
Because you know those 2 doctors you sent me?
Yes.
They've already been taken down from YouTube.
Good God.
I know. So let's start with who can we trust?
Right, well, let me preface this a little bit, because you have been telling me things for a very long time that I have thought, oh, that's a little bit out there on the
You
edge.
didn't like it, really, did you, what I was telling you?
Also, I like to think of myself as open-minded. But
I agree.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I agree. You are open-minded, but I know you didn't like what I was saying at the beginning.
Because a lot of it reminded me of the kind of stuff that my mum used to say.
Yeah, there's a point I want to make on this in a minute, but you carry on, okay?
Yeah. So, and it challenged my worldview, and it really made me feel that the if I accepted and went investigating, I'd go down a rabbit hole from which you yourself have said you wished you hadn't gone down.
No, I said I wished I hadn't been red-pilled. I don't wish I hadn't gone down the rabbit hole, because I'm now very knowledgeable, you see.
Yeah. But you can't ignore stuff when it comes at you from all directions. And I started to get to watch some stuff that brought me back to you, and I started to ask you more questions, and you kept saying, "Are you sure you want to know this?"
Yeah.
And but then when you start to, and Andy said something interesting the other day, because he had largely ignored a lot of the things that I'd been telling him you'd been saying, and he said, but when it keeps coming at you from all directions, you have to start investigating.
Yeah, when you say, and you and both Andys both say, well, it started to come at you from all directions, how did that happen? Because that's interesting in itself, isn't it?
Well, it's just people you respect of different types and around the world, because we've got a very wide circle of friends, obviously, because we know people all around the world, don't we? And when people you respect start sending you stuff, and when people you respect, lots of them, start sending you the same stuff by the same people, you start to pay attention. And he started to investigate. I did sometimes, but he said something very interesting the other day. He said, someone asked him, how can you tell what's real, what to listen to and what not to pay attention to? And he said, because you could feel it in your body.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Judith would like that.
I would like that. Absolutely. Yeah.
That you just know, you don't, just because you accept that someone is saying something that's resonating with you as the truth, it doesn't mean you accept everything they say. So
no, it doesn't. No.
There are people that say 10 good things and then one thing that sounds a bit too out there for you. But he says you just have to keep your mind open. And he talks about, that not being able to make a decision in the absence of data. So you just keep your mind open and keep the data coming. Anyway, so you sent me some stuff that I watched. That Hollywood thing was the first thing, really. And I thought, the people in this are completely credible people who have everything to lose and nothing to gain by the things they're saying.
Yeah.
And so that made me think a bit more. And then I watched the 2 doctors from America.
Can I just say something about the Hollywood thing?
Yeah.
You know how much I love movies in Hollywood and sit up all night watching the Oscars.
Yes,
it was really, really difficult for me to believe that. I mean, I've been believing it for some time now, but, when that first strayed across my awareness, it was like very, very upsetting for me to have to come to terms with believing something I didn't want to believe.
I'm not going down that particular road yet, but I was very interested in the whole CIA thing.
Yeah.
And how they're using Hollywood as propaganda, which sounds completely believable to me, because it started in the pre-CIA days, straight after the war, when we all know Nazi Germany was the master of propaganda.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then it was those 2 doctors from California. I still wasn't absolutely sure about them because they did own 7 installations that, were going to.
And also, you weren't the only person to point out. Somebody had done it in comments, and somebody else I shared it with said you can't extrapolate like this. Yeah.
So their maths and their extrapolations were a bit off, and
I don't think they were actually. I just don't think we're ready for that.
But then I watched one of the other doctors you recommended, and then there was this doctor that Andy recommended, and I watched him, and I thought, well, I really don't like him at all, but he does resonate with me as being someone very passionate.
Which one is that?
The Bashrashi, the Indian chap.
Dr. Bhattar or Dr. Shiva?
Dr. Shiva.
Yeah, Dr. Shiva's been exposed overnight by Liz Crokin, the woman who was the 3rd interviewee in the Hollywood movie, as perhaps not on our side.
Well, he still...
Which plays into exactly the point of this focus, which is who can you trust?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And well, you think you could trust someone with 3 degrees and a PhD from MIT, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but it's a question of what side they're on. Is he pushing propaganda or is he pushing the truth?
Well, that's true, yeah. He said he felt like, because I didn't like him, I had to force myself to watch him. And he did feel like he was talking a lot of sense. And then there were the 2 then there was the Swedish doctor who I absolutely loved.
Adored, me too, because he was so cuddly. He was so squidgy. I sent him to my Swedish friend and she said, I do love people that sometimes just answer questions with yes and no without feeling the need to go into long explanations about it.
It was fantastic, wasn't it? And,
yeah.
And he was just obviously such a scientist.
Yeah.
He couldn't be bothered because he'd retired, so he didn't have any financial thing. Nobody could get to him for his job or his reputation because he was already, the revered epidemiologist in Sweden.
Yes.
He told it like it was. It was, and the interviewer was fantastic as well because he was a very handsome British man, and his face was an absolute picture on occasions. And what all this was leading up to was, and the thing that really struck me most was that every single world is locked down on the basis of a report which is fatally flawed from the Imperial College. Now, if you can't get a report that's come out from Imperial College, who've got a massive reputation to defend, who can you trust? Do you know what I mean? So that's
I did poo-poo the Imperial College immediately you mentioned it. Well, because by then I was beyond trusting any orthodox source. Yeah.
Right. Well, and that has been so interesting because over the last 2 weeks, that's become increasingly obvious that there are people in people's back pockets. There are people taking financial interest.
Yes.
So great, they will say.
Yes.
Anything.
There's profit in everything.
Watching that bunch on stage, I can't even watch Trump anymore. And I know that he's not as bad as everyone thinks he is, but I can't watch the faces of those doctors standing next to him who are selling their souls to the devil, basically, aren't they?
I know, yeah. Can I tell you something interesting which really upset me? A comment you made to me on Messenger 3 weeks ago. You said over the last 2 weeks. It's interesting because you're right in the 2 weeks. Actually, it was 3 weeks because what you said to me 3 weeks ago, and I wasn't going to say this ever, but you've mentioned something this morning, so I have to. You said, do you know what I find really hard to understand? Why you of all people, ... And in the of all people is your respect for me. And then you go on to diss what I'm sharing with you. And in 3 weeks, you've completely 180'd.
It was more about the fact that I know that you like to keep your emotional vibe high. It's not that I. Yeah,
but truth is my number one value, darling. Truth is my number one value.
Yeah, but I can't understand. I couldn't understand at that point why you were spending a lot of time.
Of all people.
Well, no, listen, I didn't mean that about your. We got to, what? It's good that we're hearing this. I didn't mean that I lost respect for you.
Yeah, you didn't insult me. You didn't insult me. In those words, of all people, is your respect for me.
Yes, totally. And I just didn't understand why. You exposing yourself to stuff that would bring your emotional vibe down so much.
Because it's true.
Yeah, okay. Because it's the truth, right?
Yeah. And also, the truth will set us free. The truth is the only way we're going to wise up in lockdown. The truth is the only way out of lockdown. So, for instance, your Swedish man says, when we come out of lockdown, and we must, because the Californian doctors say, and everybody says, it's reducing our immune system staying at home, making us more vulnerable. When we come out of this, there'll be a spike in deaths.
Yeah.
But there's the alternative is we stay locked down for the rest of our lives. So we've got to come out and go through that. And, I don't relish the idea of that at all, but
And
now that I've been on the motorways and in the petrol stations and in the supermarkets, I don't feel so scared of that.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, Boris is being vilified now, but actually he said on this morning, and everyone vilified him for it, that, we have to just take it on the chin and get on with it. And obviously that's what some scientists had said to him was the only way forward.
Yeah.
Realised that was political suicide, and that he was.
Well, interestingly, that nice Swedish prof said that. He said that something that Boris has been criticised for was hesitating too long to lock us down. And the Swedish professor's view was, I thought you were going to go the way in Britain that we've gone in Sweden, because Boris didn't really want to lock us down.
No. And we all thought that was because of greed and and political popularity. But obviously, he'd been listening to a scientist who knew what they were talking about at that
stage. Maybe. I'm not sure anybody knew what they were talking about at that stage. And that's the point the California doctors say. The only reason they can put forward what they put forward now is because they've got 7 weeks of real data in their hospitals.
Yeah. And it is interesting because my friend Kim, her brother and sister-in-law work in Worthing Hospital, and I said to Kim, are they working all the hours that God sends and completely overworked? She said, no, they're sitting there doing nothing. There's hardly anyone in the hospital at all.
Well, and people said that on Facebook when they were, they were doing line dancing and funny videos. Why are they doing this if they're distraught with all the deaths and they're overworked?
I think there must be hotspots where
I definitely agree with you. Where people are on the tube. That the Swedish doctor said that. The Swedish prof said that. If you're on the tube, and if you're in New York, these are much more. You're much more cheek by jowl with people.
Dense population. Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's something in the Midlands, which is where all the first people came back to, isn't it? So, probably I don't know. Again, I've gone from not believing any of it to not knowing what to make of any of it to starting to feel that there's a lot of profiteering going on. But then I did sort of know that everyone's out to make a profit, especially the banks. The banks are the real bad guys in the world.
Well, I don't know. Healthcare seems to be infected with this now, doesn't it? And that's quite heinous.
What, everyone filling their pockets at the expense of everyone further down the line?
Well, obviously in the UK we expect healthcare to be largely free, and the Americans have never had that good fortune. But people taking a profit and chalking up deaths to COVID when it isn't, and getting remunerated for that.
Yeah, I've only just heard that yesterday, so that's good on me.
Yeah, I knew that one all along, unfortunately. But, the point is there's no right in this. Go back to the point that Andy said you just know in your knowing when somebody's telling you the truth. That's really interesting. Tell me a bit more about that.
Well, he because people were asking, because he does, he's a very bright guy, as you are, and I was sort of saying to Andy, because I don't know what I am, but I'm not intellectually bright like that. I think I'm clever and I've taught myself stuff, but I'm not intellectually bright. So I was saying to Andy, how on earth can I listen to one person on YouTube or in my life that's saying one thing so strongly, and then I watch someone else or listen to someone else or speak with someone else who I respect in my life who's saying completely the opposite or a different version. I am not feeling in my body or my gut or my instinct who's right, and that must mean that they both are.
Well, I put one post on Facebook and I was so vilified I had to take it down immediately. It was just ghastly. So actually I have to keep mainly quiet about what I think I know. But going back to our focus, who can you trust when you can't trust anybody? I think the answer is yourself.
But I genuinely felt earlier in the week that I couldn't trust myself because I know that. I'm not clever enough to.
Well, no, it's not clever. It's emotional intelligence, which you do have. It's not just all book learning, which you love. It's about, and funnily enough, you said something else in this series of podcasts we've done about COVID, which I didn't agree with, but I didn't have time to take you up on it, which was, we've all been brought up to believe that the government have our best interests at heart. I don't believe that. I've never believed that. I don't know where you got that idea from. And actually, clearly, the nation agrees with you, because the advice the government have given us is all to go home and stay there and giving up our jobs, and we've all meekly complied. Now, I don't have any trust in any kind of institution.
No, I know that, yeah.
I think that's why I'm self-employed. I haven't been to the doctor since 97. Don't believe in doctors, don't like hospitals, don't like anything state-run. And I generally exempt myself from all of it. I haven't had any injections since I was a child and don't propose to. You know, and a lot of it is on instinct. You know, I'm yes, I use my brain to read this stuff, but I'm very instinctive. And when I look back now over my adult life, or even going from my child, everything I've done which has gone against the state and the norm and has involved opting out has been instinctive.
Yeah.
I don't want a job, you know.
Yes, I know what you mean. And actually a lot of the entrepreneurs we know are very renegade like that. They don't want to be in the system as much as possible because
yeah, exactly.
Because they know that, you know, and the first inkling I ever got of this was watching those Mike Maloney's Hidden Secrets of Money videos, which I took passion about endlessly. But I think they're
excellent, and he's still. I sent you one by him the other day. You know, he's still putting out good data.
Yes, he is, and it's a miracle he's not being censored. Like
I agree.
I suppose, you know, and the other one who I watch obviously regularly now is the Kaiser Report, and if you read his background, that is absolutely fascinating. How he came to be such a rebel, and now you've got your chap Brian Rose from London Real, who I thought was just interviewing entrepreneurs, but is now staking a stick in the ground and saying, you know, I'm. Well, talk about the censorship thing now.
Oh, well, I like that. I like that expression about staking a stick in the ground, because this is the moral dilemma I struggle with every day. I put up a post on Facebook. I was so vilified by people, I had to take it down. Coward, Judith. Brian Rose is not being a coward. He is standing up and bringing, you know, people I used to think were nutters to this discussion. David Icke, who used to talk for 20, 30 years, he's been in this, David Icke, and we just wrote him off as a nutter because he talked about UFOs and lizards and all sorts of weird things like that. But he was very coherent, and it was his interviews with Brian Rose that got Brian Rose taken down. And what I really love about the Brian Rose story, well, twofold really. One is he's an American who's chosen to live in Britain. I've no idea why, really. But he'd spent 7 years building up this audience.
Entrepreneur, business orientation.
Yeah, he had. And it was taken away from him in a day because he'd interviewed David Icke. And he lost all his followings and everything. But he crowdfunded an alternative that nobody can take down.
I know, and I think that's probably what's the difference is you know, that they're independently wealthy, and they've got access to a lot of money.
Hang on a minute, who are independently wealthy?
Max Kaiser.
Well, I don't know that only through effort.
No, he's not inherited it. He's earned every penny of it, and
quite
cleverness.
But I'm not sure what good that is if suddenly your following is wiped out by the. You know, the fact that we're being censored by Google, Facebook, and all of those is quite terrifying, isn't it?
You know, Andy has got a group. He started this thing called Rational Thinking Podcast, where we get together twice a week, and he talks about what he thinks. He talks honestly on a private webinar for some of his higher level clients, and he started a Facebook group just so that we could discuss what he talked about on the thing. And Facebook are actually censoring what he's putting in his own private group.
Yes.
And the funny thing
is, I said to you, didn't I, that you've been talking. Sorry, you finish.
And for example, he shared something by a Nobel Prize winning scientist.
I know.
And he's got, every time you go to look at this thing in his private group, it's got a massive disclaimer underneath it from Facebook saying, this has been proved, the content of this video has been proved to not be true.
Yeah.
It's that.
And you know, worse than that, I read this morning that if Andy and I and you are caught disseminating this on these platforms, the police might turn up at our door and take us away.
No.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. And you know, you've mentioned for ages on this podcast, I never really understood what you were talking about, the word shadow banning. Well, that is censorship.
I don't know much about that, so I can't. I don't think I have mentioned that. I think you've.
You have mentioned it. You have. It's called shadow banning. It's when your stuff doesn't go out as you intend or isn't seen.
Well, I've been shadow banned with the Money Gym since 2006.
I know. Anything which entitles people to think freely and opt out of the state and work for themselves. Now, let's go back. So inside, and you see, this is why I'm going to have to come off Facebook imminently. Inside Andy's secret Facebook group, Facebook are censoring the content. Is that right?
Yes. He's sharing something.
Now, how do you feel about that?
Well, I just feel that it makes an absolute mockery of. How do I feel about? Well, I just feel. In some ways, I felt when stuff started getting taken down, I thought, well, if it's sharing dangerous content, which is what I thought the content was at the time, when I was thinking that there is this massive pandemic out there and we're all locked down for our own good, and
and Judith's not taking it seriously.
No, I never felt that, because you were will anywhere. Anyway, I felt that that stuff that shared incorrect and dangerous information should be taken down. But now I'm realising that extends so far, and that those two Californian doctors should never have been taken down.
Well, let me tell you this. Whose job is it to make that decision for an adult about what is and what is not dangerous? If it's wrong, it's not dangerous. If it's wrong, there's no need to take it down.
Yes, well, that's what Andy says about vaccination. If you've been vaccinated, you've got nothing to fear from a non-vaccinated person.
Quite. So in that case, it should be our choice. Apparently on Monday, my birthday, they made a law where it's going to be compulsory in the UK. They snuck in a compulsory one over my dead body, and it probably will be. They're not going to vaccinate me.
Well, funny, just before this all started, literally when we all knew it was coming, but we weren't locked down, I went to the doctors. They offered me a flu jab.
Yeah.
And I've never had a flu jab in my life, because I never get colds, and I haven't had flu since the 70s. So I said to her, will it help against the COVID-19? I said, well, I'm not having it then. No. And I don't know why I did that, because I'm not anti-vaccine. I've had all the kids vaccinated, and thank God nothing horrible's happened to any of them. But I think that's more by luck than judgment now. And I certainly wouldn't go out of my way to have a vaccine. And especially if the vaccines don't work and they fill you full of this metal stuff, which may or may not.
Quite. Let's go back to
react badly with.
Yeah, let's go back to Andy's point. Yeah, let's go back to Andy's point. If you've been vaccinated, you've nothing to fear from those of us that haven't.
Yeah, blindingly obvious, unless the vaccines don't work.
Absolutely blindingly obvious. Well, there's another point, I think, as well, which is, and I've discussed this with some of my quote-unquote conspiracy theory friends. If we are successful in declining the vaccination, some of our personal freedoms could be reduced.
And that is the worst bit of all. That is.
Yeah.
That is.
So if you really, 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 sorry, we've got a horrible delay now. If you really, really felt as strongly against vaccination as I do, I don't mean not giving your kids MMR, please, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but in my adult life, of my own free volition, I take the choice not to have a vaccination myself. And if in the current global paranoid circumstances, that means I have to stay in lockdown. And so, for instance, what that could mean is, I mean, it probably means I might not be able to travel.
Yeah.
Which isn't the end of the world. I have to weigh up a choice of all of the things I wouldn't be able to do against being vaccinated. And so, for instance, it might happen that, I don't think it will, but it might happen that, say, a member of my family didn't want to come to my birthday party in 6 months' time because I hadn't been vaccinated.
Even if they had?
Yeah. Because there's no logic in this, Nicola. There's a lot of fear, remember.
Yeah. Well, as someone who did experience quite a lot of fear when I realised this thing was coming and nobody else was listening to me, I understand now how I look at this, I've got a suitcase full of pasta under my bed, for God's
sake. Well, the hardest thing for me, since this is Honesty Week, the hardest thing for me was to turn up week after week and listen to your fear. That's the week when I said, I don't think I can come. It's like, I can't listen to any more of Nicola's fear. I don't believe in it, and I don't want to be infected by it. And it's so far from my reality. I thought I wasn't going to be able to do it, but you came round in your own time. Now, you're not all the way over to my side, but at least you've come off your fear, and you're in the middle, and you're open to, Andy's rational thinking.
Well, I'm open to your rational thinking too now. And I have to apologise publicly on air for not. Can
I tell you, I have nothing invested in being right. Nothing. Less than nothing invested in being right. I don't even know that I am right. But what's really important to me, is the censorship point, but also if some of the sources of information are confusing and conflicting, and nobody agrees on anything, and everyone has an opinion, who can we trust?
And the thing is, all the while that continues, that is fantastic, because it means we've still got free speech. But all the while that the people who are speaking against the financial interests of the government and Big Pharma and other people, you know, who I thought were good guys but turn out to have some very nasty agendas going on entirely, then that's not free speech anymore, is it?
No, it's not. And to be honest, ultimately, if you correlate it to other global goings on that we're aware of that were before our lifetime, and I'm not going to draw parallels to that at all, but people dobbing in their neighbours, for instance,
yeah, that was nasty.
That's what happened, you know, in the run up to World War II.
I mean, I had to go. My sister Heather has moved in around the corner, and I haven't been able to go and see her at all.
No.
They've got a little back alley, a Twitton, as they're known in Sussex.
Yes.
In between the houses, there was a little tiny covered alleyway, and there's a gate at the end of it. And since all this started, they've had that gate locked. And we got to the point where Heather was so worried about us all being locked up in here. She sort of realised that we had the roof, but, you know, she was worried we wouldn't be able to go up there very often because of the wind and the rain and stuff. She went and talked to her neighbours and said, could my sister and her daughter come round and sit in my newly refurbished garden if we stay 2 metres away and, you know, we're really careful about the crockery? She felt the need to go and ask people so that if we came round and sat in her garden, they wouldn't report us. And that just shows
I am going to ask my sister-in-law, I'm going to ask my sister-in-law very soon if I can visit my family in their house. And the reason I'm asking her is because she's very sensible and she is very fearful of things. And it will be down to her, even if I sit in the garden socially distanced from my brother, my sister-in-law, my niece and nephews, not for my birthday party, just for a visit. So we're in the garden shouting at each other from 6 feet away, or whatever it is. I want to do that soon. And I'm going to have to ask their permission, which is fine, because if they say no, even though you've been free of anything for, well, the entirety of
weeks,
it's bringing in to their contact group everybody I've met in the last 2 months, isn't it? Including the man that let himself into my front gate last night.
And no, to be fair, in Heather's Road, someone did die of COVID, but they were old and they had COVID.
Well, Nicola, you can't say that anymore, can you?
No, they did.
All you can say is it's been chalked up to that.
Yeah, they died with COVID. Yeah.
Yes, that's it. And I think that's an important point to make. I think actually any of us that die now would be dying with COVID. I think I've probably got it. You know, I'm asymptomatic, but that's what the Swedish doctor said. We've probably all had it. Got it.
50% of us have had it, doesn't he?
At least, yes. Well, that's good.
Yes. It means we're closer to herd immunity.
Well, it means we've got the antibodies.
So the final thing, you know, if I was Boris and I'd seen that Swedish guy and I'd realised that I had acted on incorrect information, the report for Imperial College, he can't just now turn around and say, okay, everybody out, because then am I correct in saying that he's not doing everybody out, because then the NHS would get swamped because it would move too suddenly through the population?
Yeah, and I think what they're well, certainly they've got the capacity for it in ICU, which before they told us they hadn't got.
Now, yeah.
I know, but what the Swedish doctor said, and I think perhaps what the Californians said, and what everybody's saying is, you open up slowly.
Yes, bit by bit.
So that if the incidences do increase, and they will, that the hospitals can cope with it. Yeah. And also now we've got various combinations of things that we know will work, and that we shouldn't be putting people on. You know, if you get put on a ventilator, that's the kiss of death. You're off. Okay, you're circling the drain, as they call it on Grey's Anatomy. However, what you've got now is you've got the issue, just not with vaccination, but beyond that, of and the professor made the point, the Swedish professor, in a democracy where you know technically we all still have the choice over everything. When Boris says, right, we're going to open up and we're going to start with schools, some of the parents won't be sending their children back to school because they're still afraid. Yeah. Okay. So the coming out of it is going to take much longer than going into it. And if we'd known that or thought about that or weren't so fearful when we did it, we might have done this another way. I'm not sure schools is where I'd start, although maybe children of a certain age are, you see, it's about the science versus the emotion, isn't it? So if I was a parent, I might think, if I listen to all these doctors, that children are quite good at handling immunity. It's only people like you and me who are older with comorbidities who are more at risk, not the kids, actually. But if you were a parent, you'd be so emotional about sending your children back to school, wouldn't you?
Yes, I think so. But by this stage, I'd probably be so desperate, I'd be happy to send them.
Honestly, as I said to you in Focus of the Week, my clients are falling, big emotional cracks are opening and we're all falling into it now because it's really beginning to hit home. The sunshine's gone and it's not a lovely paid holiday at home anymore. It's like, when can we get out of here? Yeah. And there doesn't seem, if you follow the medical advice, it doesn't seem to be a safe way to do that. People are going to die.
Yes.
Like they do every year of the flu.
Which is so hilarious because it's come right back round to...
Yeah, it's what I said to you in week 1 and it's recorded on our first episode. It's no different than the flu, Nicola.
That just, that's so beggars belief that you can be... that you can be so manipulated. Well, I suppose they were all acting on that stupid report that was...
I don't know that it was just that stupid report. I do think that I think they were in a... Forget the agendas for a minute. Forget the people with an agenda. Let's imagine there were people like, say, that lovely New Zealand Prime Minister lady. Let's say there were people who were trying to think alternatively, trying to think in the best interests of their people. What do you do if the whole world is shutting down? It's a bit like the thing that I used to see parents do, which is, do we cram our children so that they can get the best O levels and A levels and the best opportunities, or do we just relax and opt out of it all? And either way, we'll be killed for a sheep as a lamb, or whatever the expression is. Well, there was no way to get that right, was there?
Well, I opted out because I knew my kids weren't intellectually gifted at all, and in fact struggled with the straightforward stuff. But I also knew they were very bright and they'd find their own way, and they were capable of learning things if they were interested. So I didn't.
Right. Let me ask you a question.
A lot of pressure from Kim.
If they were 14 and 16, would you let them go back to school next week?
Without a doubt.
If they were 6 and 8, would you let them go back to school next week?
Probably. Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
You see? So who can we trust? Only ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been political suicide. You'd think it would have been political suicide for the Prime Minister of New Zealand and the Prime Minister of Sweden, but they're coming out of it all covered in roses now.
Well, no, they're going to have the same ratio of casualties, whatever way you did it. That's what they're saying.
Yes, that's right.
But what they haven't got that we have is, I can't remember who made this point, the increased incidences of child abuse, domestic abuse, mental health issues, suicide, and all the other things that arise from us all having been locked down. And it's taking its emotional toll on normal people like you and me.
Yeah.
Normal people like you and me and our listeners.
Not so much me, because I don't go out much.
It did initially, darling. It took it, not being locked down, but this whole thing took its emotional toll on you at the beginning.
It did. I was very, very anxious for about two or three weeks.
Yeah, and you thought we all weren't taking it seriously. And you'd attacked us quite a lot, and you fell into a big thing on Twitter where you were all angry at us all of the time.
Yes. I kept it to Twitter, though.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. All we've done in real time is watch your learning curve.
Yeah.
Which I think is informative. And many people listening to us now will say, well, you're not right. You've ended up in a different place, but it's not a better place or a more right place. It's just another place.
Yeah.
But I really think we have to redevelop. It's the same thing as my book, Learning to Trust Yourself. And we have to relearn to trust ourselves, because if we've abdicated, all these decisions for our health, well-being, in every sense, financial well-being, emotional well-being, employment well-being, safety, all of that, if we've abdicated that to outside agencies who may or may not have skewed agendas, then we have to make the decision for ourselves. Will I be vaccinated? Yes or no? Will I let my children go back to school? Yes or no? Will I be self-employed or get a job? Yes or no? We have to go back to when we had individual responsibility for our own lives as adults.
Yeah. Yes, it's so interesting. The lingering feeling I had about. I think it's just the way I've been brought up. In the lower working classes that I think it's a mindset thing about the whole government.
Well, it's not a viewpoint. You take that viewpoint very much when it comes to responsibility in self-employment. So you had it in some areas of your life, just not all areas of your life. You're very, very keen on people taking responsibility for their own actions or lack thereof.
Yeah, because I had to learn to do that because I was, the princess waiting to be rescued for 38 years of my life. And it was only when I realised it was not coming that I got out of that. Anyway, I'd be interested to see if anything reactions we get from our listeners on this one, and also what, if anything, happens about us talking about it freely. I think because we haven't mentioned any names very much, we should be all right.
Yes, I agree.
That'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Anyway, moving on, shall we?
Yes. Yes. Have you got a word?
I have. It's called freedom, because I can glimpse it. I'm seeing that Greece is coming over the month of May. Greece are, with caution, coming out of entirely, and they're even going to let international flights back by the end of May. So
okay,
because they want July, August, and September to be a full-on. Because otherwise, it's going to kill the areas I love.
See, that's interesting, isn't it, in a way, that because it's going to kill the economy, sod everybody's health, will open up again. I think, you see, that's the juggle, isn't it, all of the time with everything. We never have an opportunity to make a decision in a sort of pure place. There's always criteria, and it gives rise to the moral dilemma. Will you have to have your temperature taken, or will you be quarantined when you get there? That's what I would want to know if I was flying to Greece.
No quarantine when you get there. It'll all be about testing this end.
Okay.
That's
whether you're safe to travel.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to go in October because that's when they have the literary festival, so that'd be fun.
Okay.
But what's your word then?
It's excoriate, which means flaying the skin off somebody. And when we get to who or what's impressed, you'll know why I've chosen that word. Do we have any project updates?
Yes, I am beginning the long, slow job of taking the Money Gym book apart into concepts, big concepts, medium concepts, and little concepts, so that I can chunk it down for delivery to a younger demographic. Because all they want is short, sharp audio or written lessons. I've been talking to Phoebe about how best to deliver this. You'll be glad to hear I've taken your advice, and I'm taking the moneygenius.club members into a Telegram group because I don't trust Facebook anymore. And it's a dull job, but that's what I'm working on. But we have had, I forgot to tell you in my week, we've had our first paying client in the Money Genius Club. So
very good. Really
quick. Phoebe's been sharing it on her social media as well to her age group, and a young Filipino / British dual nationality lady picked my brains yesterday about stuff, and
how cool.
More than got our money's worth.
Yes, absolutely. One of those few members, whilst you can count them, and know them, they'll get excellent service, won't they?
Well, that's right. She said she's going to spread the word far and wide because I really helped her on an urgent matter. So that was good.
Very good. Who or what's impressed you?
I don't know why this gets me blubbing every time. The newly promoted Colonel Tom Williams. It's his 100th birthday today. He's been promoted from captain to colonel. He's had an RAF flyby and a cake. The BBC breakfast team seem to have taken Colonel Tom Williams under their wing, and he's on there regularly now and having a lovely time by the looks of it. But every time I watch him, I blub, and I don't know what it is at all. It's sentimentality of its finest kind, or worse.
It's sort of the pandemic equivalent of Vera Lynn's "We'll Meet Again."
It really is. And I never particularly like Vera, but she's going strong at 103.
Yeah, good on her.
Yeah. What about you?
I was going to say, we'll have a job for her next week. Yeah. Well, I'm going to talk to you about television today. The winners of Race Across the World. No spoiler alerts. They were worthy in every way, but my heart might have preferred any of the other couples to, because they had far more emotional journeys, but they were very deserving. But I'm going to make a recommendation of 2 television programs. I've had a big telly week, which I haven't had for months. The young adult novel, Normal People by Sally Rooney, which was longlisted for a Booker Prize, is on BBC iPlayer in 12 30-minute episodes. It's the story of 2 Irish teenagers who fall in love at school and then continue their love affair at university, the prestigious Trinity College in Dublin. It's quite raunchy, endless amounts of sex. In fact, somebody on Facebook asked, is there a non-X-rated version of this program? It reminds me a bit of a book called One Day, in as much as it's about the big love affair of your life, which either does or doesn't pan out, but which defines you for all others. It was so difficult to watch in episode 2, I had to turn it off, because it takes you right back to that place when you were a teenager in love and in your early 20s, and you made a complete bog of it, and it was difficult, and you cried and all of that kind of thing. But then I came back to it a few days later and binged it to the end, and it was, although continuing dark, difficult moments, it was really worthwhile, I thought. And it's quite mustardy, because a lot of people don't like either the book or the Marmite. They don't like the book or the television program. And then last night I saw another one on Netflix, only 4 hours all in, based on a true story. It's called, I think you'll like this one, it's called When They See Us, the true story of 5 teenagers from Harlem who were wrongly accused and imprisoned, and what's happened to each of them in their lives from then on. You know, they went to prison, they eventually came out of prison, and what they're doing with their lives now. And Oprah had a producer credit on it, I think I noticed. And my little Swedish neighbour kept on at me to watch this, because she had a big thing about racism, and I watched it last night, and it was thoroughly worth 4 hours of my time.
Oh, good, because I might not have got past the fact that they were wrongly accused if you hadn't recommended.
Well, all 4 episodes, when I realised it was only 4 episodes and we we're going to see the whole story in 4 hours, although, you know, you see the circumstances leading up to the wrong, you know, the police falsifying the thing, then the court case, then the imprisonment, then life after. So you once I realised it was only 4 shows and I didn't have to watch 11 out of 12 of them all languishing in prison and it being miserable, I perked up a bit, and it is worthwhile. And of course it's the same as it's institutionalised racism, and it was in the days when the police were allowed to coerce confessions out of people so that they could solve crimes, quote unquote. Well, there's still that furore about the bloke going, who do you think they'll believe? That policeman going, who do you think they'll believe? And, you know, if I make it up. Yeah. That was a shocking thing. Yeah. Can I do a final recommendation? Because you may. Into my head. Yes. Red Riding. It's something that has been recommended on Channel 4 by the Channel 4 staff who are at home watching more telly than they would normally. So they've got a staff pick. Yes, like they do in Waterstones. And it's very, very gritty. It's three things about the West Yorkshire Police Force, which were riddled with corruption for a long time. Yeah. And they've got one episode about a crime set in the 70s, one episode set in a crime in the 80s, and one in the 90s, I think. And they're all set against the backdrop of other bigger investigations that are going on at the time, like the Ripper. Yes. And I've just found the whole thing to be the music is set in the 70s, the first one, and it just took me straight back to my teenage years. Yes. But it's very gritty, but I really, really enjoyed it. It was very well written. And over the decades, does the way the West Yorkshire Police handle these cases improve? It changes, and the best thing is that they keep the characters going through each one. So So it's a dramatisation, is it? Yes. Yes. Okay. Dramatisation, but based around real events, and you see these characters who start off as rookies in the first one turn into higher ranking police. Yes. In the later one, it's very good. Lots of good acting in it. Yes. Oh, I will enjoy that. Yeah. Good stuff. Well, that's us. Yes. Do let us know in the group on Facebook, Own It, the podcast group, what you think of this episode and what your thoughts are about. And who you can trust. Yeah. Lovely. Thank you very much. All right. See you next week. Bye. Bye. You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.